This is Chair Michelle Espinoza calling the Real Estate Commission meeting to an order. Marcia, may I have roll call, please?
Michelle Espinoza.
Here.
Kim Redeker.
Here.
Joe Chang.
Here.
Graham Kaltenbach.
Here.
Renee Leint.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Now may I get an approval of the February 7th, 2023 Real Estate Commission meeting minutes?
Madam Chair, I motion to approve the February 7th, 2023 Real Estate Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I am abstaining as I was not present at the meeting.
Thank you, Kim. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes as presented. Do we have any public presentation of issues not on today's meeting agenda?
Anybody from the public, if you'd like to address the commission, you should see a hand icon. If you hit that, we'll call your name and unmute you. Madam Chair, I do not believe anybody would like to address the commission.
Thank you. We are now on to policy matters. Director Waters, I believe Code of Ethics for Board and Commissioners is up first.
So commissioners, we're doing this with all of our boards and commission. This is just to basically get everybody on the same page as far as service expectations when you serve on one of the regulatory boards or the commission, and also your stakeholder groups or your task forces. So this would be applicable also to the Education Task Force, the Forms Committee, and any other task force we might create on your behalf. But it covers conflicts of interest, what to do when you have somebody that contacts you basically in our ex parte communication, attendance, just kind of the whole gamut of serving on a board or a commission. So does anybody have any questions about this? And this is just kind of a bigger project that Dora has been doing as far as commission and board modernization and making sure that we manage our boards consistently across the department. So we had borrowed heavily from the Division of Professions and Occupations with this policy.
I don't have any questions. Would you, after the meeting, would like us to sign it and return that to you?
So Doreen will send it out to you with the Adobe signature format. So if you could sign it and return it, that would be greatly appreciated.
All right. Nobody has any questions or comments on that one? All right. Thank you. All right. We're on to the 2023 CREC Education Task Force members.
So this is going to be either David Donnelly or Eric Turner.
I'll take that, Marcia. Thank you very much. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you very much for your time today. My name is David Donnelly, and I'm the manager of the Education, Communications, and Policy program within the division. I'm joining you today to present you with the 2023 Colorado Real Estate Commission Education Task Force members. I'm very pleased to present you with an excellent group of individuals this year. The presented task force members have a wide array of qualifications and skills ranging from experience with real estate schools to being instructors, to being educators, to being associate brokers and managing brokers, as well as property managers, attorneys, and investigators within the division. So, as well as several other vital roles within the division staff. As you might know, the Education Task Force primarily assists with the required annual commission update, the ACU course materials, but also assists with other matters that may come before the division, really just from time to time. The goal of this task force is to review and improve policies and matters in order to enhance the educational experience for brokers across the state of Colorado. So for 2023, the Division of Real Estate has identified the following individuals to serve on the Education Task Force. Stakeholder members would be Patrick Armbrust from Armbrust Real Estate School, Heather Bustos who is an employing level broker with Compass Real Estate. Damian Cox, an attorney, as well as the founding member of Cox Education LLC. Jesse Farnloff from the Colorado Real Estate School. Todd Franklin, an employing level broker with Coldwell Banker. John Gillum, employing level broker with Exit Realty, Home and Ranch, as well as he is also an instructor. Holly Krell, from the Colorado Real Estate, the Colorado Association of Realtors. She is the Director of Professional Development. Rob Lind, a managing broker with Milestone Real Estate Services and Property Management. Heather Ann Mott, an employing level broker with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, and a member of the Envision Home team, as well as a trainer. A new member this year, M. Eric Romero, who is the Director of Brokerage Management at Your Castle Real Estate. And then finally, for the stakeholder members, Charity Vermeer from Northern Colorado School of Real Estate, as well as the managing broker for Remax Alliance and an instructor. In addition to these highly qualified individuals, there would also be 3 additional staff members from the Division of Real Estate as part of this. First would be Patricia Hardy, who is an investigator with the division. And then also another one of my colleagues, AJ Jackson, with who is a senior education specialist. And then finally myself, and again, as I'm the manager of the education communications and policy program. So if you deem it appropriate, I'd respectfully request that you approve the Real Estate Commission Task Force members for 2023 by a motion and a second and by vote. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the 2023 CREC Education Task Force members as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Kim. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right. Policy Matters C, agenda items for next meeting. Marcia, would you like me to ask if there's any?
It doesn't sound like there is, but I did want to do 2 other updates for you before you move into investigative matters. Sadly, this is going to be Kim Rediker's last meeting with the Real Estate Commission. She's stepping down because it conflicts with her day job. So I really appreciate her service on the commission, and we're going to arrange to have a plaque sent to her for her service. But we did send out an email, a broadcast email to our listserv and all of our licensees, letting people know that we now have a public member vacancy on the Real Estate Commission that we're trying to fill, along with a couple vacancies on the Board of Real Estate Appraisers, and that went out last week. The other announcement I wanted to give for you guys is that we have hired a senior advisor to the division director, and her name is Melissa Phipps. She's at this meeting. Melissa previously was one of our attorneys general, and she has represented cases for all 3 of our programs. She left the practice of law for a little while, and she has come back. So she will be helping out anytime we do any policy or rulemaking. She'll help out with drafting policies, stakeholder engagement. So you will see her from time to time as well.
All right, thank you. And Kim, I'm sorry that this is your last meeting. Thank you so much for being such a integral part of the commission. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, guys, I'm really sorry. I was at a different job when I took this role, and I had Mondays and Tuesdays off as my weekends, and so there wasn't any conflict. And I very happily got a new job as a general manager at a great property in Vail, but it is a Monday through Friday and a lot of responsibility. And And unfortunately, these meetings conflict with when I have my board of directors meetings. So I'm sorry to leave the commission. I've really enjoyed it and working with every single one of y'all. But I'm excited for my new opportunity. So thank you.
Well, congratulations.
Yes,
Thank you.
congratulations.
All right, looks like we are on to complaint and investigations and audits.
Right. Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
First is investigative matter A. This is audit number X 2020 22-159. This was a routine audit open on October 4th, 2022. The respondent reported that they managed 41 residential properties and another 8 broker-owned properties. The respondent maintains separate trust accounts for the third-party property management, security deposits, and broker-owned properties. However, the respondent has not been keeping a journal or ledger for any of the accounts and has not been performing monthly three-way reconciliations of the accounts. The broker does reconcile the bank statements with the manual reports of transactions to keep track of cleared deposits and withdrawals, but was unaware that the monthly reconciliations were not compliant until the audit began. The bank statement heading on one of the trust accounts did not include the word trust or escrow, but was corrected during the audit. However, the account heading still does not include a label identifying the purpose of the account. Additionally, the respondent has not provided a conflict of interest and license status disclosure to the tenants of the broker-owned properties. The respondent affirmed that they would include the disclosure moving forward, but has not provided documentation that has been provided to the current tenants. The broker has been working to become fully compliant in the trust accounting process and reporting, as well as practice issues such as conflict of interest and license status disclosures. Possible violations include 12-10-2171H, failure to account for funds received, 12-10-2171M, violation of any commission rule. Rule 5.2, money belonging to others must be deposited in trust or escrow. Rule 5.14, record keeping requirements. And Rule 6.17, duty to disclose conflict of interest and license status. Recommended disciplinary action includes diversion, a fine of $1,000, coursework and trust accounts, and a follow-up audit within 3 months. And Auditor Jay McLean is here today, but she's having some audio issues. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments on this case? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
I'll motion that in commission matter A, that we accept the recommendation of diversion, fine of $1,000, coursework and trust accounts, and a follow-up audit within 3 months.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, I think I heard Graham first. Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The next is investigative matter B, complaint number 2022-2112. During the investigation, the respondent admitted to modifying the seller's concessions within the contract to buy and sell, and then electronically re-signing the buyer's signatures. The respondent states that he signed the CBS with the knowledge and consent of the buyers. However, the buyers stated that they did not recall authorizing the respondent to sign the contract on their behalf. Possible violations include 12-10-217-1Q, and disciplinary recommendations include diversion, a fine of $500, and coursework and ethics. And Investigator Geske can answer any questions.
Thank you. Any comments or discussion on this case? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
In investigative matter B, I move that we accept staff's recommendations of a diversion, a fine of up to $500, and a coursework in ethics.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
The next is investigative matter C 2023-174. On November 21st of 2022, the respondent pled guilty to a misdemeanor class 1 assault 3, known reckless cause injury, and another misdemeanor offense. He received a deferred sentence that included 15 months supervised probation, domestic violence evaluation, and court fines and fees in the amount of $991.50, which has been paid in full. The respondent asserts that he did self-report via the division's website on December 16th of 2022, but this could not be verified, and it also cannot be said for certain that he did not. Possible violations include 1210-217-1N, and disciplinary recommendations include diversion, a fine of $250, and probation to run concurrent with the criminal sentence. And Investigator Gabarty can answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments on this one? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
I motion that in investigative matter C, we accept recommendation of diversion, fine of $250, probation to run concurrent with a criminal sentence.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
Investigative matter D is 2022-1016. The complainant was the buyer in the attempted purchase of the subject property whose sellers were represented by the respondent. The complainant alleged that the respondent inaccurately listed the property as having AC. However, that was not the case, as the subject property was equipped with only an attic fan. The investigation found that the complainant's allegation was factual and that the respondent did update his listing with the accurate information prior to subsequent buyers submitting an offer. The investigation also discovered that the seller's property disclosure was not updated regarding additional reports completed regarding the roof damage, and that the respondent did not advise the sellers to update it. Possible violations include 1210-217-1Q. Disciplinary recommendations include diversion, a fine of $1,000, and coursework in contracts and forms. And again, Investigator Gabarty can help answer any questions.
Thank you.
I did have a question on this one. In the due diligence section of the contract, they had asked for any previous inspections to be provided, and they were not, and that was not addressed in this investigation or in the final. Is there a reason? Shouldn't that be addressed as far as the fact that that was in the contract and not done?
Hi, this is Investigator Yvette Gabarty. I did not ask the respondent that question based off of his previous answers to questions that I had asked him prior.
Okay. Because there were adverse material facts and some of that was not disclosed, and because of the due diligence not being handled properly and inspections not being given, I think this led to some confusion. So I would think that there should be some additional disciplinary recommendations. Anybody else?
Well, I guess my question would be whether or not this is covered, under the coursework for contracts and forms, if it's something that would be ironed out in that course.
That probably depends on the provider.
Okay.
There's no way to specifically say. It's not like the annual update where you can define what's in there.
Got it. Okay.
Renee, what kind of discipline do you have in mind?
I'm not sure, honestly. I just thought that was something that was fairly important that was not addressed in the investigation. We're not in the recommendation. One way to address it would be to increase the fine.
Commissioners, thoughts?
I would support that, Renee, if you'd like to make a motion for an increased fine at a minimum, I would support that.
Okay, do you want me to make a motion on the whole thing right now?
Yeah, I think unless we have any other comments or questions from the other commissioners, I would say go ahead and make a motion.
My only other comment is regarding the coursework. Would it be more of an ethical issue for in that regard? So
add coursework and ethics. Is that what you're thinking, Joe?
yeah, if we're debating whether or not it would be covered in the contracts and forms class.
Yeah. I would kind of second Commissioner Chang's feedback in that I would probably prefer to see more coursework rather than an increase in the fine.
Okay. Okay, Joe, go ahead. You can make the motion.
I think we should make Kim do it all because her last meeting. Okay. Well, I motion in investigative, I gotta back up. Investigative matter D for disciplinary action of diversion, fine of 1,000, coursework in contracts and forms and in ethics.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes for diversion, a fine of $1,000, a coursework in contracts and forms, and a coursework in ethics.
Okay. Commission matters E and F are on one referral. Complaint numbers 2022-1922 and 2022-1001. For complaint number 2022-1922, the summary goes as follows. The complainant represented the buyer in the attempted purchase of the subject property. The sellers were represented by the respondent. The complainant alleges that the respondent demonstrated incompetency on multiple levels throughout the transaction, which resulted in the contract failing. Complaint number 2022-1001. The respondent was the listing broker of the property purchased by the complainant. After closing, the broker of the buyer who had previously attempted to purchase the property contacted the complainant's broker, asking if the respondent had made him aware of any adverse material facts, specifically the sewer line damage discovered during the previous inspection from the failed transaction. Nothing about the sewer line was disclosed by the respondent to the complainant's broker. Possible violations include 1210-217-1K, 1210-217-1M, 1210-217-1Q, Rules 5.12, 5.21, and 6.11. Disciplinary recommendations include public censure, a final agency order, a fine of $3,000, coursework in contracts, coursework in ethics, and a license downgrade to an associate broker with a high level of supervision for 2 years. And Investigator Goodbarty can answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Hearing none, may I get a motion?
In investigative matters E and F, I move that we accept staff's recommendations of final agency order, public censure, fine of $3,000, coursework in contracts and ethics, and a license downgrade to FA with high level of supervision for 2 years.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
Investigative matter G is complaint 2022-1040. The complainants worked with the respondent in the purchase of a property. The complainants alleged that they were misinformed regarding the anticipated reduction in the HOA fee and that they were misinformed about their ability to use the property for a short-term rental. According to the respondent, this information had been conveyed by the listing agent to the buyers during a showing. During the investigation, it was found that the respondent may not have properly disclosed her brokerage relationship to the buyers. Possible violations include 1210-217-1M, 1210-217-1Q, and Rule 6.5. Disciplinary recommendations include diversion, a fine of $500, and coursework in brokerage relationships. And Investigator Peters can answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments on this case? Hearing none, may I get a motion?
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, Michelle. There were quite a few things in this case that were issues, and I'm sorry, but I would recommend that the fine on this one be increased because there were so many issues on it. And, you know, there was a text on there that says that the person was only working for the buyer, but yet the boxes were not complete. There were multiple issues and disclosures. So I would recommend that the fine on this one be increased.
Okay, what amount would you be comfortable with?
I would say at least a minimum of 2,500.
Commissioners, any comments? Discussion?
Personally, I personally feel that the current staff's recommendations are fairly appropriate in the situation.
Anyone else?
Graham.
As well. I just Renee, 2,500 seems excessive, and I don't know is there a particular violation?
Well, the biggest one has to do with the disclosure. The agent was saying that it was a transaction broker and it wasn't disclosed to the buyer. And then the CBS says clearly that the other agent is a sales agent, and then the buyer's agent didn't even fill in the boxes on the contract, but yet there was verbiage that was sent to the buyer saying that they were working for you, but we have multiple issues going on with how they were actually being represented. I mean, these are simple boxes to check and simple disclosure that's required. And this is something that a licensed realtor should know how to do correctly.
Renee, instead of an increase in fine, would you be open to an increase in education, maybe a coursework in contracts and forms?
Yeah, we could do that if you want.
Okay.
All right, can we get a motion?
Sure. In investigative matter G, I move that we accept staff's recommendations of diversion, $500, a fine of $500, coursework and brokerage relationships with the addition of coursework and contracts.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes with disciplinary of diversion, a fine of $500, a coursework in brokerage relationships and contracts.
Investigative matter H is 2021-1968. On November 30th of 2022, the respondent pled guilty to felony criminal mischief, $100,000 to $1 million, and felony criminal possession, financial device, 2+ devices. She was sentenced to 5 years supervised probation, 120 hours community service, and court fines and fees in the amount of $3,448.50. The respondent did not provide any response in the investigation. Possible violations include 1210-217-1W, 1210-217-1N, 1210-217-1M, and Rule 6.25. Disciplinary recommendations are public censure, a final agency order, revocation, and a fine of $7,500. And Investigator Gabarty can answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions or comments on this one?
Just to comment, I wish we could do more, but seeing that we can't, I motion for an investigative matter H to accept disciplinary recommendations of final agency order, public censure, revocation, and a fine of $7,500.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
All right, good morning, commissioners. Commission matter I is complaint number 2021-1922. The complainant alleged numerous accounting irregularities related to the management of his properties. However, there was insufficient evidence to prove the complainant's allegations. We conducted a financial examination, and as a result, the commission alleges the possible violations of license law as follows: commingling of funds, diversion of funds, failure to hold money belonging to others in a trust or escrow account, failure to maintain proper ledgers, failure to maintain required through reconciliations, failure to separate money belonging to others by purpose, and that's referring to the security deposits and rents accounts, failure to deposit earnest money in the brokerage firm's trust or escrow account within 3 business days following receipt of funds, failed to supervise an unlicensed employee, and failed to have non-commission approved forms, specifically the leases and property management agreements drafted by an attorney. The possible violations are 1210-217-1H, 1210-217-1I, 1210-217-1Q, 1210-217-1W, 1210-217-1M, and the rule violations potentially are 5.2, 5.5, 5.9, 5.10B, 5.14, and then on the second page, 5.7B, 6.3, and 7.1B. And the disciplinary recommendation is a final agency order, public censure, coursework in trust accounts, coursework in finance and property management, required quarterly audits for the next 2 years, and also required to replenish any account shortages. And Investigator Rakay is not here today, and I can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Discussion?
I do have a question on the fine, just because there are so many possible statute violations. Is there a reason why the staff did not recommend a fine in this matter?
Yeah, so you can, of course, definitely add a fine in if you feel that's appropriate. I think in this matter, we thought that we originally had a fine and then thought, well, we'd rather maybe that money go towards any replenishment that needs to happen.
Okay.
But like I said, of course, you guys can add a fine if you think that's appropriate.
I mean, I think after hearing that explanation, that's, I'd rather see the money go to replenishment as well. So thank you.
Any other discussion?
Well, I think that there should be some sort of fine because there are so many violations and so many of the things that were being done were very blatant. If, as you read through the case, that they were aware of statutes and rules and chose not to abide by them. So I do feel there should be some sort of fine. I mean, when you have a property management company and everything is, the money has this many violations, there should be some repercussion.
Any other discussion? Sarah, is there usually a cost associated with their audits? Maybe not from the division, but on their side, is there usually a cost associated with that?
That's a good question. I don't believe so. If we're doing it, yeah.
Renee, what kind of fine are you wanting to propose?
I would propose something very high, but I understand that's not reasonable. So I'd like to hear what other people think might be appropriate. They're just, like I said, it's a blatant disregard for statutes and rules. And when you're managing with other people's money, this is important.
Yes, it is. And the reason I asked about the financial cost to an audit is my understanding is, from what I've heard, is that it doing an audit from a property management side takes a lot of time and energy, and maybe not money per se as in dollars, but money as in time to make sure that's all done. So while I understand that sentiment that they this is serious, obviously, but a quarterly audit for the next 2 years, I think that's probably one of the stiffest audits we've ever handed out in my course of being in this seat. And like Graham, I would rather them pay, make it a priority to replenish any account shortages that there are. I don't know. Any other discussion?
Michelle, I would agree. Knowing that there are going to be follow-up audits, those there then are potentials for fines if additional violations occur.
Mm-hmm.
So I am okay with staff recommendations as they're currently written.
Any other discussion?
Commissioners, depending on what this broker chooses to do, there are several of them to do actually hire outside consultants to help them get their books in order. So if that is the path that the individual takes, there is an added expense for them.
Well, I definitely think that making them do a quarterly audit for 2 years is, it's not a slap on the hand. I mean, there's such a high level of supervision per se on our side for them, that I don't think that we need to do a fine. But if there's no other further discussion, if someone wants to make a motion.
Commissioners, before you do that, can I just ask you to consider one thing? At the end of the recommendation, there is the requirement that account shortages be replenished. That's not exactly something that's within your authority. So you could condition the quarterly audits on the non-payment of those funds. In other words, if there remain account shortages, the audits continue for 2 years. But if the accounts are replenished, the audits will stop. You could do that. I'm not sure quite what this language means, but that's something that I would ask you to consider.
Okay. Maybe does someone from the commission want to maybe discuss what that replenish any account shortages means from the commission side?
Well, then I have a question, which is, can we impose a fine that could be waived provided account shortages were replenished by a date certain?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in the investigative report, and it was hard for us to tell exactly where the monies were. The respondent had said that the security deposits were lying with the owners, but we weren't able to verify that the security deposits were with the owners. And so the shortage that we had identified was, I believe, I have it down here, $25,907 was the apparent shortage that we had found. You can definitely do a fine and then say, or they can work it out in the negotiations where, maybe if that money does need to go back to the security deposit account, that could potentially be in lieu of the fine. That would depend on negotiations. Your max fine on this case, well, would be very high. We have $2,500 per violation. So so 12 times 2,500 would be 30,000 max fine.
And we've done something like that before, I believe. Is that correct?
You have, yes.
Is that what you were thinking, Kim?
Yeah, since we can't really, require them, as Angela said, to replenish an account shortage. But I think if we could tie the fine to, that shortages were refunded, that would reduce the fine. I think that, to me, that would be fair. But I don't know what the time frame for that might look like. I don't know if, it's a year or if we even, I don't know. I need direction from staff on that.
Renee, how do you feel about that?
Okay, so the shortages we're talking about are those, we're simply talking about the ones where they're saying they're owner held deposits. Is that right? That are not verifiable?
Yes, that's the number that we have in the report, but it is, like I was saying, hard to tell if, where that money is exactly. And I think that that's the quarterly audit follow-ups. But yes, the number identified in the report is that 25,000.
Okay, so actually this could be rather, I hate to say easy or simple, but if it actually is held by the owner can transfer it back to the company. They can hold rents to cover it, keep that. They can put that back, and this would be relatively easy to get it back into a property management held deposit if that's what the issue is that we can't verify the owners. So if it really is held by the owners, there's not a shortage per se. It's just where it's being held and verifying it.
Potentially. we don't know for sure that that money is with the owners, but yes, there is a potential that it could be there. The lease was silent. Many of the property management agreements were as well. We attempted to contact owners and we're not able to get a hold of them. And so that's just goes back to the whole problem here, right? Of poor bookkeeping is that we don't know if it appears that that money is missing.
So we don't know, because it could be that the owner does have it. And if that's the case, there's not a true shortage. They are just not writing their contracts, their leases correctly. So this could be something that could be relatively easy to get figured out between the owners and the property managers. So it may not be that the brokerage actually has to come up with this money. If the owner actually is holding it, it can be transferred. So it's not that they're going to have to come up with $25,000. It sounds like we don't know.
Potentially, yes. I will say that this was a very long investigation of multiple requested documents. And we did try to verify this information. So as far as it just being simple to figure out where the money is, we tried to do that before bringing it to you, and I'm not sure how simple it will be.
Well, I'm not saying simple to figure out where it is, but it could be, if it actually is with the owner, it would be relatively simple to change, update a lease to say that, or to transfer money back to the property management company so it's now held there.
Sure, yes.
And it would not actually be money that the company is going to have to come up with if it actually is being held by the owner.
Mm-hmm.
So Renee, are you wanting?
It sounds like we don't know. We don't really know if there's a shortage or not, because we had people that weren't responding. So it sounds like we don't know. I'm just saying, a lot of it, we're saying, okay, we're not going to fine them. We're not going to penalize them because the shortage. And we don't really know if there is a shortage because we don't know if the owners are actually holding that money or not.
What we know is that there's a shortage in the accounts that we verified, and we were told that that could potentially be, with the owners, but in the documents that we have, that's the shortage that we have found. So that's why we called it an apparent shortage, but it definitely, in the financial examination that we conducted, that was the number that we came up with that appears to be missing, whether it's with the owners or whether it's somewhere else.
Okay, so if we go back to doing some combination that the other commissioners are talking about, where there's a fine, and I'm not sure how you've done it before, Michelle, where there's a fine, but it can be, I don't know if you stay it, waive it, do something if the brokerage is able to come up with a document where the security deposits are. I don't know how you've done that in the past or what the verbiage would be.
I believe that was something that was done on something that Penny has done on the backside, in the negotiation side of that, where we give her authority to make those accommodations for us. Is that correct, Angela?
I'll let Penny speak to that if she wants to, but I will point out something that Joe said earlier, and that is that there is a chance this may come back before you if these audits do uncover additional violations, and maybe Sarah can speak to this as well. So if you don't address the fine or the accounts replenishment at this time and the audits go forward, Sarah, and additional violations are discovered or the shortages are confirmed or there's reason to bring it back to the commission. Can you speak, Sarah, about what happens then? Because you may have a chance to reconsider this respondent in light of the ongoing audits.
Right. Yeah. So this will go over to the auditing team. They will, start their quarterly audits. And let's say that the money is replenished, or he provides information showing exactly where all these security deposits are and they're all with the owners, then that, is information that could come back to you. But for now, if you wanted to put a fine on it as it stands with not knowing where this money is, and then we can take a look at what happens after, and that can be part of the negotiation.
I will just chime in and say that if you felt like a fine was appropriate based on the violations, then and you go ahead and impose that. When I do talk to individuals and trying to resolve these cases, I often direct them to listen to this recording so they can hear the discussion and understand the commission's thoughts in these cases. And they have the opportunity to present additional information at that time. And sometimes, if it's been hard for the investigation to get some information, sometimes when they're faced with the actual disciplinary action, it can be motivating to supply additional information for you all to consider. So this could actually come back if the money was missing and they made the argument that they needed the resources to replenish those accounts and could show us that they've done that. Then that could come back to you to reconsider maybe not imposing a fine. So I think you should look at the violations and determine what you think is appropriate. And then there are still some other steps in this process that could provide you with additional information.
Great. Thank you, Penny. All right. Renee, what kind of fine do you think you would like to see on this?
Well, based on what Penny just said, if it's used to negotiate or spur on action, the max fine is $30,000, and I would say that would spur people on to action.
Commissioners, any discussion?
And just typically you don't impose maximum fines unless you are seeking a revocation. But I would just have you consider what you think an appropriate fine is based on the violations.
I mean, I would propose a fine of $10,000, which is $1,000 per violation. I do think that's significant and is appropriate in this case. So I would move in matter I that we adopt the following disciplinary recommendations: final agency order, public censure, coursework and trust accounts, coursework in finance and property management, 3 hours, quarterly audits for the next 2 years, and a fine of $10,000.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes as presented by Commissioner Whitaker.
Okay, so commission matter J is complaint number 2022-892. The investigation originated from a complaint that was submitted against a licensed mortgage loan originator regarding the complainant's attempt to purchase a property. The complainant alleged that the MLO failed to timely notify her that her loan was denied. The complainant explained she lost her $1,000 earnest money deposit and had to live in a motel because she had already terminated her lease. The investigation was opened against the respondent, who represented the complainant as a buyer's agent. The investigation found the potential violations that the respondent failed to exercise reasonable skill and care, which resulted in the complainant forfeiting her $1,000 earnest money deposit and failed to establish her brokerage relationship in writing with the complainant. Possible violations are 1210-217-1M, 1210-405-1B, 1210-408-2B, and Rule 6.5. And the disciplinary recommendation is a diversion, a fine of $1,000, coursework in brokerage relationships, and coursework in contracts. Oh, sorry. And Carolyn is here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, may I get a motion?
In investigative matter J, I move that we accept staff's recommendations of a diversion, fine of $1,000, coursework in brokerage relationships, and coursework in contracts.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
Okay, so investigative matter K is complaint number 2022-977. The division received a complaint from a home seller who alleged that the respondent wrote a contract with multiple misrepresentations. The investigation found that even after the specific terms of the contract to buy and sell changed, the respondent failed to document in writing that the purchase went from a cash transaction to a financed purchase, went from an owner-occupant buyer to an investor buyer, and failed to disclose in writing her license status and ownership interest in the purchasing entity. The investigation also documented what appeared to be a discrepancy between the date the exclusive right to buy was signed and effective, with a creation date approximately 13 weeks later. Possible violations are 1210-217-1Q, 1210-217-1W, 1210-408-2A, 1210-217-1M, 1210-405-3A, and Rule 6.17B. Disciplinary recommendation is public censure, a final agency order, coursework in contracts, coursework in ethics, a fine of $5,000, a 30-day suspension, and a license downgrade to FA for 5 years with high supervision. And Investigator Hardy is not here today, but I can answer whatever questions you may have.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
In matter K, I move that we adopt the disciplinary recommendations of final agency order, public censure, a fine of $5,000, coursework in contracts, coursework in ethics, a suspension of 30 days, and a license downgrade to FA for 5 years with high supervision.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
All right, investigative matter L is complaint 2023-23. On January 5th, 2023, the respondent reported a felony 6 conviction in Eagle County, Colorado. The conviction was the result of multiple years of public assistance misuse. The possible violation is 1210-217-1N. Disciplinary recommendation is diversion, a fine of $250, and probation with the division until criminal probation ends. And Investigator Levy is here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any discussion? May I get a motion?
In investigative matter L, I move that we accept staff's recommendations of diversion, a fine of $250, and probation running concurrent until criminal probation ends.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
Commission matter M is complaint 2022-2173. On December 6, 2022, the respondent was convicted of theft, a class 4 felony in Hamilton County, Ohio. The conviction stems from the respondent stealing approximately $231,566 from a dance association over a 3-year period beginning in 2017. The respondent was ordered to pay $156,566 in restitution. The $156,566 amount was ordered was the balance owed after a $75,000 payment the respondent made. The respondent has since made an additional $1,205 payment. The possible violations are 12-10-217-1N. The disciplinary recommendation is final agency order, public censure, coursework and ethics, probation concurrent with the criminal sentence, and a practice restriction that until the probationary term is completed, respondent cannot handle money belonging to others, have trust accounts, or have access to trust accounts. And Investigator Coates is here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
In matter M, I move that we accept the disciplinary recommendation of final agency order, public censure, coursework and ethics, probation concurrent with the criminal sentence, and a practice restriction that until probationary term is completed, respondent cannot handle money belonging to others, have trust accounts, or have access to trust accounts.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I think I heard Graham first. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
Commission matter N is complaint number 2022-2244. In November of 2022, the respondent pleaded guilty to assault 3, knowingly with reckless cause injury, a class 1 misdemeanor, and false imprisonment, both misdemeanors. In 2022, the respondent was convicted of 3 counts of violation of a protection order, a class 1 misdemeanor. And in another separate case in 2022, the respondent was convicted of protection order, a class 1 misdemeanor. The respondent is serving a concurrent sentence for all convictions of 90 days in jail and 3 years probation. Possible violations are 12-10-217-1N, 12-10-217-1P, 12-10-217-1M, and Rule 6.23. And the disciplinary recommendation is diversion, a fine of $1,500. And I do want to add to that probation that is concurrent with the criminal probation. And Investigator Coates is here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Just a question on the fine. It says in the notes, 3 separate cases, $250 each, and non-disclosure $250.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, am I missing something? So that would be 1,000, and the fine it says 1,500.
Let's see. So you have $750 for each case. So 3 case $250, so $750, and then non-disclosure for each case is $750. So
Oh, each case. Sorry, I missed that part.
better than me too. And yeah. So yeah, that's where that came up with.
Any further discussion? May I get a motion?
I motion that in commission matter N, we accept disciplinary recommendation of diversion, fine of $1,500, probation concurrent with, I would say that with the current sentence, and that's all. Sorry. Not sure if I said that right. Probation concurrent.
Thank you. And Kim, did I hear you second?
I did.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
All right, matter O.
Could I ask one clarification on a previous case? I'm so sorry before we move on.
Sure.
On matter M, you had indicated that you didn't want any access to trust accounts, et cetera. And I'm just wondering, would that include his inability to upgrade to either independent or employing broker, just so that we can actually monitor that that doesn't occur? Right now, they are a broker associate, and I wasn't sure if that was part of their probation.
Well, that's a very good point.
If you prohibit his ability to upgrade until this is completed, that way you'll have a better ability to have that supervision to make sure there's no access to those accounts.
Correct. Kim, you made the motion. Would you be willing to modify your motion?
And Sarah, I don't know if that was your intent. I apologize for interjecting. I just want to know what to put in the stipulation.
No, that's okay. I think that's a good addition.
Yes, I will modify my motion to include that the respondent cannot upgrade his license status during the probationary term.
And Graham, you had seconded that motion. Are you still okay with seconding?
I'm okay with that. Yeah, second.
Okay. All those in favor of the amended motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks for the catch, Penny.
All right, so matter O is complaint number 2022-1990. On September 22nd of 2022, the respondent pled guilty to menacing with a real or simulated weapon, a class 5 felony. The conviction results from an incident on May 27th, 2022, when the respondent was intoxicated at a bar and a verbal altercation arose. During the verbal altercation, the respondent's concealed firearm became visible and was considered a threat by the bar employee, who was the victim. Possible violations are 1210-217-1N, 1210-217-1P, and then I want to add 1210-217-1M, which then pulls in the rule 6.23. And disciplinary recommendation is diversion, a fine of $500, and probation concurrent with criminal probation. And Investigator Coates is here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
In investigative matter O, I move that we accept staff's recommendations of diversion, a fine of $500, and probation concurrent with criminal probation.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented. It's 10:09. Are we good with taking maybe a 10-minute break before we finish the second half of our meeting?
Yes, please.
Yep.
All right. Let's come back at 10:20, so an 11-minute break. Okay. All right, it is 10:20 and we are back. We are on to licensing matters.
Okay, so licensing matter A is complaint number 2022-2180. This is an application. So in May 2006, the applicant was convicted of a Class 5 felony criminally negligent homicide. The applicant was sentenced to 30 months in the Department of Corrections, and the applicant has completed all terms for jail and probation and has a $0 balance. The applicant had the following misdemeanors. In May of 2005, resisting arrest. December 2005, crimes against persons, harassment. June of 2006, contempt of court, violation of protection order. August of 2006, contempt of court, violation of protection order. August of 2010, abusive language, threat. May of 2011, assault and battery, domestic violence. And December of 2013, assault and battery. On February 4th, 2019, the applicant was convicted of illegal possession of ammo and firearm illegal possession. Those are felonies. He was sentenced to 5 years in jail with 4 years suspended and 2 years of probation. And the applicant has completed jail and probation terms. The case is closed. There is no recommendation per usual, and Investigator Quintana is here to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you. Discussion?
I am, oh, sorry, go ahead. You go first.
Well, you know, I was a little concerned about this applicant, but I appreciated that they sent so many letters of recommendation. Yeah, so and most of the convictions were, you know, quite a while back, and they did serve their sentences, and everything is completed. So that's my only comment.
Mine was, you know, I support giving someone a chance to succeed. I was concerned about the number of convictions of, and I don't think I would be as concerned if the 2019 conviction wasn't there. I would feel more comfortable that the applicant was truly rehabilitated. But I do second what Kim said. I appreciate the documentation and the level of, I guess, completion that the applicant took for their application. But I truly, I'm on the fence on this one. I don't know.
I'm with you, Joe. My concern is that there is a history, and the one, you know, there was one within the recent, you know, the past 4 years, and there's also a concern of mine that there is a lengthy history. So anyone else?
Yeah, I struggle too with the lengthy history and the recent you know, the 2019 conviction. You know, I do, you know, the personal statement I think really came from the heart, and I, you know, really you know, thought it was heartfelt, and certainly you know, one of the most colorful personal statements you know, I've seen since joining the commission. And I really did like seeing just the amount of personal recommendations that came with this applicant. But I am also kind of on the fence and also struggling with this application.
Question on if we do approve, are we able to do a restriction of sorts that if the applicant does get another criminal conviction, then say then their license is automatically revoked. I don't know if that's just too strict or not even possible to,
So commissioners, you could order him to have a restricted license, but if there's a subsequent criminal conviction, we're gonna have to bring it back to you as basically a violation of that stipulation.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I would be open to that.
And you just need
Okay.
to consider how long you want the restriction for.
I mean, would we think 2 years of a restricted license would be sufficient for the other members who are sort of on the fence about what to do here, or do we want to, or are you thinking maybe you'd probably be more open to just a full, denial or a negative opinion?
Renee, did you have any comments or discussion for this?
The restricted license is a interesting way to go, but I believe it should be longer than 2 years based on the history and frequency of what's going on with the past records. So I would say either a denial, or if you want to do restricted, I would say it should be at least 4 years.
When you say restricted, you mean that they need to be a high level of supervision for longer than the 2 years, correct?
Yes, and that if any conviction happened during that time, that they would lose their license. Is that something we can put in place as well?
Well, I think he would have to come before the real estate commission at that point regardless, is what.
So the terms of the restriction, you can require that he's got to disclose his criminal background to his employing broker, and the employing broker has to agree to supervise, be under a high level of supervision, and that during the period of restriction, he can have no additional criminal convictions.
So I think 4 years would be better than 2.
Okay.
Okay. Well, what was the second thing you said, Marcia? I'm sorry. You said disclose to their employing broker.
He would be under a high level of supervision as well for the period of the restriction.
Yes.
And then no additional criminal convictions during that period.
Okay. I thought there was something between disclosing to his employing broker and the high level of supervision, though.
Well, so, I mean, his employing broker has to agree to supervise.
Okay. And we do have the letter from the employing broker, but that doesn't mean he might not change employing brokers during the period. So with that said, I would move that we approve the application for licensure with the following restrictions: that he must disclose his criminal history to any employing broker, and that the employing broker must agree to still employ, knowing that history, a high level of supervision for 4 years, and no additional criminal convictions during the period of the high level of supervision.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Motion passes for full approval with sorry everybody, I'm on cold medicine. With the restrictions outlined by Commissioner Redeker.
All right, so moving on to licensing matter B. That is complaint number 2023-232. This is a preliminary advisory opinion. In 2016, the applicant pleaded guilty to accessory to a crime, a class 4 felony. Her probation was terminated early in December of 2021. There's no recommendation, and investigator Quintana is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Discussion?
I mean, this is just a preliminary advisory opinion, and I would be inclined to do a positive opinion with the recommendation that the applicant provide at least 3 letters of recommendation, including one from a potential employer with the application for licensure. And I'll make that a motion.
Thank you, Kim. Do we have a second for that?
I second.
Thank you, Graham. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented by Commissioner Redeker.
And just to clarify, would you want to see that application again, or just if they were able to provide it to division staff? 3 letters?
I think the Real Estate Commission would want to see that application again.
Yeah, I would want to, see it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so licensing matter C is an application. It's complaint number 2023-102. In April of 2018, the applicant pleaded guilty to shoplifting under $500, a misdemeanor. All sentencing terms have been completed and the case is closed. There's no recommendation, and investigator Quintana is here to answer any questions.
Any discussion?
The letters, there was only one letter that was dated. And I don't know if that's much of an issue, but none of the other letters were dated.
Anybody else?
I don't necessarily have an issue with that, just because at least one of the other letters is, specifically mentions that the recommendation is for approval of her real estate license. So it's not like it was written as a generic letter for the next 10 years for any job she applies for or whatever.
Yeah, I also really like seeing the diversity of recommendation letters as well.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move, in matter C, I move for approval of licensure.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes as presented.
Licensing matter D is complaint number 2023-148. This is an application. On October 11th, 2018, the applicant was convicted of tampering with physical evidence or destroying a class 6 felony and an assault 3, no reckless cause injury, a class 1 misdemeanor. The applicant was sentenced to 7 months in jail, 3 years probation, and a fine of $12,071 with $600 waived. They were also ordered to pay restitution of $9,073 joint with the co-defendants, with the total restitution balance of $14,367.94. The applicant has completed the jail and probation sentence. There's no recommendation, and investigator Quintana can answer any questions you have.
So the fine that it was assessed it is a joint fine, is there any way to separate that out to see or require that this applicant pay their share?
There's no specific amount. It just says joint to the other defendants.
So then the applicant hasn't paid, it's still sitting out there. And
Yeah, I don't know if it's the applicant or the joint defendant, the co-defendants. I don't know who paid, but there is an outstanding balance.
I would say unless they can separate that, and we know that the applicant has paid the portion that belongs to them, I would say no.
So what we have from the Colorado State Courts, all of that amount, that's for all of them collectively, correct? The documents have. I mean, I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, Tabitha, I might be getting this confused with another one, but my memory is that the court wasn't able to separate out what belonged to whom. So it's just really, we have to go on the information, just that there is this outstanding balance. The applicant didn't provide proof that he had, paid a certain amount.
He did not. Is that correct?
Yep, did not. Yep.
So I would say we would need to see proof that he did pay whatever his portion is, and we'd need something showing how many people or what his portion should be in order to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like there were four people involved. So, not that I'm not going to do the math on that, but $12,000 divided by 4. I would agree with you, Renee. I would be inclined to deny the application until we have some sort of documentation of any fines that have been paid by the applicant, not by the group.
Right. I mean, after that is done, then I think we could look at doing it, but I think we need to see that he's paid his portion.
Right. And I don't want to hold him responsible for what other people haven't paid, but we need some sort of evidence that he's made an effort to pay his portion of the fine.
Yep.
Commissioners, just a couple of things. One, I'm not sure that a conditional denial is going to be very easy for the division to follow through. It sounds like you might want to defer this one to your next meeting to see if he can provide the evidence that you're looking for. I will say that if the order to pay the judgment was joint and several, then each defendant is responsible for the total until it's paid. And so you can consider in mitigation that he has paid a portion of the amount if in fact that is provided to you. But legally, he would be on the hook for the entire amount, as would each of the other defendants until it's paid.
That's awesome information. I would move to table this application with a request for additional information from the applicant on the fine that was due and any payments that have been made in that regard.
We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would just like to add that I'd probably also like to maybe see some more letters of recommendation, because I think I'm looking and I don't think I'm seeing any.
We just have the one from the broker.
Okay. So I
Yeah.
guess I would like to see maybe, one or two more letters of recommendation as well.
I will modify my motion to include a request for additional letters of recommendation.
Thank you, Kim.
All right, and Renee, you second that?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes to table this to the next commissioners meeting with request of additional information.
Okay, commission matter E is complaint number 2023-151. This is a preliminary advisory opinion. On October 6, 2015, the applicant was summarily suspended in connection with an investigation in which she, among other violations, failed to return earnest money, commingled funds, and misused funds. On November 23, 2015, the applicant accepted a stipulation and final agency order agreeing to voluntary surrender in lieu of revocation of her license and a fine in the amount of $17,500 plus a 10% surcharge for a total of $19,250. The fine was stayed unless the applicant attempts to reapply for licensure as a real estate broker. And I do just want to add that this fine has not been paid. So it would need to be paid. On December 20th of 2010, the applicant stipulated to a $3,200 fine, 80 hours of education, and supervision for a period of at least 6 months or continuing until she completed 5 appraisal reports. On January 17th, 2014, the applicant stipulated to a $1,500 fine, 8 hours of education, supervision for a period of at least 3 months, or continuing until she completed 6 appraisal reports, and also submit to random appraisal reviews for a period of 3 months. On April 19th of 2018, the applicant stipulated to surrender her appraisal certificate to be treated as a revocation and a $6,900 total fine. $5,750 of the fine was stayed unless the applicant attempts to reapply for certification or licensure as an appraiser. There is no recommendation per usual, and investigator Denise Wright is here to answer any questions you may have.
Discussion?
Could I just offer one point of clarification on her stipulation with the commission that was signed in November of 2015? It wasn't in lieu of revocation. It was a surrender to be treated as revocation. So it was a revocation. She just agreed to sign it, and the language is a surrender to be treated as a revocation.
Thanks, Penny.
And that was the same in 2018 with the appraisal license.
Correct.
Discussion?
I would be inclined to issue a negative opinion.
I would agree.
Okay. And Angela's going to ask us for a reason why.
We actually don't need one when it's a preliminary advisory opinion.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to ask for that, but I will ask you to make a motion.
Yeah.
I move to issue a preliminary negative opinion.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes for a negative opinion.
Okay, licensing matter F is complaint number 2023-247. This is a preliminary advisory opinion. On October 16th of 2019, the applicant was convicted of a Class 3 drug felony, marijuana cultivation of 30 or more plants, and a Class 1 misdemeanor, illegal weapon possession. The applicant was sentenced to 180 days in jail, 3 years probation, and a fine of $3,466.50. The applicant completed all terms for jail and probation and has paid the fine in full. The case is closed and there's no recommendation, and Investigator Quintana can answer any questions.
Any discussion? May I get a motion?
I move for a preliminary positive opinion.
We have a second.
Second.
Graham, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes for a positive opinion. We are on to ESP matters.
Okay, the only matter I have for you today is regarding case number 2020-1646. This individual had a case with the commission. It was set for hearing. It went through hearing. He did participate initially, but ultimately a final agency order was issued upon default as they stopped participating in the process. They have not fulfilled the terms of the final agency order that was issued. And we are bringing this back to you as a violation of that order, seeking a violation of 1210-217-1M, a fine of $2,500, a final agency order, public censure, and a revocation of the license. There is the final agency and the initial decision are attached. You'll also see that there was a previous stipulation from 2009 that was attached. It's not necessarily relevant to this particular case. It's just showing that this individual has had a pattern with the commission. So there is the concern of the ability to regulate. And now there's a question as to whether he's even interested in the license anymore. So that's what we are asking you to consider.
Okay. Any discussion or questions for Penny?
And I will add that although his license is currently expired, it expired at the last year. But for the 3-year period of expiration, they do have sort of the automatic right to renewal. So that's why we're still proceeding, even though he's currently expired.
So Penny, I have a question. The original fine amount was $17,250, and he hasn't paid any of that.
Correct.
But then our recommendation is to drop that to $2,500. Why would we do this?
No, I'm sorry if that wasn't clear. So when I bring cases back to you for a stip or an order violation, there is one new violation of that.
Okay.
And so it's just a fine it's an additional fine. So the order would include that they are required to comply with any other terms. I don't think we're going to get any money out of this individual. The more important thing is probably for the revocation of the license. But no, that's not changing the fine amount for the original order that was issued.
So Penny, I do have a question then. And this is just more a point of clarification. On the seeking the $2,500 fine plus 15% surcharge, is that 15% surcharge, just for my own knowledge, is it on the total fine, or is it just or is the 15% surcharge on this new fine of
So
$25?
the order that was issued on the first complaint, on the complaint that this is about, had a fine of 15,000 plus 15% surcharge. We have a statutory surcharge on all of our fines. And so that's why the original amount is 17,250, because it had the 15%. And so anytime we would impose a new fine, we would add the 15% on top of that new fine. So if you proceed with this, the individual would still have the obligation to the 15,000 plus 15% on the first order, and then this additional 2,500 and 15%.
Thank you, Penny.
Sure. Sorry, it's so confusing.
All right. Any further question or discussion? May I get a motion?
I move that we proceed with the violation 12-10-217-1M in indicating a violation of this final agency order to include discipline of a $2,500 fine plus 15% surcharge, final agency order, public censure, and revocation.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Renee. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes for as presented by Commissioner Redeker.
Her last motion.
Her last. All right, it looks like we are going to go into executive session.
And Madam Chair, before you read the motion, just a reminder to the commissioners, I think the division has a way of muting this platform while you're in executive session, but out of an abundance of caution, if you leave this on in the background, please turn off your camera and mute your microphone and use the separate link for executive session for the discussion of these following matters. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, this is Commission Chair Michelle Espinoza. This is a Colorado Real Estate Commission meeting on April 4th, 2023, and the time is now 10:53 a.m. I move that the commission enter into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute Section 24-6-4023A2 for the following purpose: to receive an update from counsel on the status of related case numbers 2022-906, 2022-936, 2022-1212, and 2022-1367, all for MV, 2021-1640, JC, 2021-1356, TC, and 2021-1384, JL. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There are 5 votes in favor of executive session. We will now enter into executive session.
Can everyone hear me here?
Yes.
We can hear you here. I think we are just waiting.
For Joe. There's Joe.
There's Joe. All right, that concludes our meeting on April 4th, 2023. Thank you again, Kim, so much. I just want to publicly acknowledge you again. Thank you for sitting on this commission and being such a vital member. And we're going to have to figure out who's going to start taking up the the motions. So, thank you so much. And meeting is adjourned. Everybody have a wonderful day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.